Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
And welcome to the Law Show on CL 650. We're talking about family law. We have David Halkett here. He's partner at McQuarrie Hunter in Surrey, and Sarah Morse, an associate. And we talked before the break, got to know you and how your area of law sort of kind of works. But specifically, we want to get into pensions because selling a house and dividing that's not too hard to do. House is worth X dollars. You split it in half. Pension's a different animal, right? So what layers of pensions are typically out there?
Well, it depends on what area you work in. There's the federal pensions. So if you work in a bank and you have one, or if you work in railways or
so these
Canada,
are things that are federally regulated.
Exactly.
Right.
So they're under federal legislation. Then we have our provincial pensions, which are like our superannuation pensions. So nurses, provincial workers, teachers, etc. And then, of course, you also have two different types of pensions. There's what they call defined benefit and defined contribution. Defined benefit are the government pensions. So I pay in $5 and government pays in X dollars as well. And it's what I get is based on an average of my 5 best years of income.
So that means that it's guaranteed at that amount.
Exactly.
For the rest of your life.
Yeah. And then there's defined contribution, which are basically group RSPs. And so you only get back what you've actually put in, unlike the government ones where you get back based on your income.
Okay, so that's where they say, okay, you've been a teacher for 30 years and you get a percentage of your best 3 years for the rest of your life. The other one is, say you put $1 into a pension in your company and they match it maybe dollar for dollar or a portion of that, right? At the end, that's just a lump sum.
Exactly. You have maybe $300,000, it's like an RSP and you just draw down on it.
Right. Okay, so how does it, how have you seen things go a little sideways when it comes to pensions?
Honestly, on most of my files, it's really just come down to valuing them. Yeah. That's been the biggest issue is, okay, first of all, a lot of people don't actually even realize there are pensions until we ask them an initial consult. So what
someone's
about pensions?
Been working and the spouse doesn't even know they have a pension.
No.
They don't even think about it.
It doesn't even cross their mind. So, that's one of the questions we ask when we first meet with a client when we're going through assets. What about a pension? Like, pension. Well, what do you mean pension? And then sort of go through it with them. And often it can be a very valuable asset. And then it's either, do we just split that according to the Family Law Act, or are we going to value it and figure out, can we trade off somewhere else? So it is a very big negotiating tool, potentially. And
a lot of people think of just the old age pension. That's what they think of a pension. On some. That's usually you just get it just for being there. It's not something that's divisible.
So then there's CPP, right?
Which is divisible as an asset.
It is?
Well. Yes, it is.
Okay, because, for example, I work and my wife stays at home, so I'm contributing to CPP, therefore I would collect it. Yep. So I think you've told me in the past you kind of get credits. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Credits.
Yeah. What happens is over the years you build up credits, and it's based on whether or not you were at the max over the years and how many years you paid in, and then they determine at the end how much you're entitled to on a monthly basis. If it's divided, they just add up the credits both earned during the marriage, equalize them, and then Canada Pension Plan Act just deals with it.
So they actually just put those credits in your account?
Yeah. They would just in effect equalize them. So if you had 10, your wife has 5, both of you get 7.5, and it just goes onto your ledger. And it's only divided as per what you have accumulated during the relationship.
Now, what about old age pension? Like you do, so you get your CPP, which is what you've helped pay into, and then you just for being old, you get a pension.
Exactly.
Not older.
Older, yes. Yeah.
So is there any way to get some of that?
That's usually both just get it. There may be an issue of spousal support if one's getting it and the other doesn't because they recently moved to Canada and one doesn't qualify. But usually that's just not a pension divisible because you don't build up credits. You just get it just for being there.
Okay, so when you have a defined benefit, a defined pension, so nurses and teachers and firefighters and police officers, those sorts of things, they can be quite valuable, right?
They are. So often what happens to me is people come in and they get a form that says, here's what my contributions were. And they'll say RSP, when the assets were $50,000 and my contributions in my pension were $75,000, say. So the person says, well, I should only pay her $8,000 or $10,000. forgetting that the $75,000 contribution in your pension is really meaningless. It's just the amount that's come off your check. It's really what you're going to get paid on a monthly basis going forward. And it's a long-term income stream for you.
Yeah, because if you retire at 65 and you live to be 90,
exactly,
that's a long time to be collecting every single 2 weeks or a month, right?
Well, I'll tell you, my sister was one that she had a pension, and she used to complain, I can't put money in RSP. I said, Di, you're going to get X dollars a month just for breathing when you're 65.
Yeah.
And so people forget about how important it is down the road. So we have to value how much the actual pension is worth if the person decides I don't want to split it, because some want to keep it all for themselves and then they'll take less out of another asset.
Okay, what about I work for a big multinational company and I have a pension or I paid into a pension and I left that job before I met my wife or husband, either way, right? And then you get divorced. That 10 years that you paid into a pension before you met that person, is that yours to keep?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to share that.
You only divide what you accumulate during the marriage or relationship.
Now, somebody maybe changed jobs partway through the marriage. As you pointed out, they didn't even know a pension existed. For example, I worked for a big multinational company. I paid into it for 10 years. And then the last 10 years, I changed jobs and I don't have a pension. Where you're getting divorced, how would you know that pension even existed?
You might not, but there is mechanisms in place if you're starting family law proceedings where you have to provide full financial disclosure. And that's sort of one of the first things we do on our files is exchange financial documents, do a financial statement. And so and those are sworn documents. So you need to provide your actual assets. So you need to actually give that information. So we will actually ask for those documents.
Could someone just forget to give that to you?
Well, there are times for people, I have had clients where they've forgotten they had a pension, like they've been at their own self-employed for the last 15, 20 years, and they forgot that they worked for a union for 5 years back when they first got married, and they had a small pension. Unless if it's in your scenario that you said, Zach, where it was prior to the relationship, it really wouldn't have a bearing on on any division. It would only have an issue if you're actually collecting it and it's giving you more income.
So you're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
You're getting more money.
And so then maybe it comes into a support issue because it's extra income you have available to pay support. But Sarah's right. You're supposed to disclose everything. And people do forget sometimes. Like, obviously as people they're going through a rough time, if they're older, they may forget that they had certain assets. But for the most part, 99.9% have no intention of lying on their forms, and they'll remember it at some point.
Okay, it's a bit of an off topic, but what about if something was in the home that was perceived to be of value and the other person didn't know that it was the China collection was worth $10,000 and the spouse didn't? I guess that's just, how do you ever get that money back if someone decides to sell, or they have a watch that's worth a collectible or something like that, or even a record collection that's quite valuable?
Well, on our financial statements, it says there's one box that says anything like jewelry or collections that are valuable. For the most part, I consider that if it's worth more than $1,000 or $2,000 or some kind of a arbitrary number. A lot of times people think something's far more valuable than it is. They'll think this is an antique when it's like, what would you actually get for it?
It's not collectible. It's just old.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just because it's old doesn't mean everybody wants it.
So, often when there's something in the home, we'll ask our clients to make a list of what they have. You can value it. You can have someone come in and give a value of everything in the home. Usually it's not worth it financially to go to a lot of extreme, but certainly if there's something valuable, it is a family asset.
Now, I heard a story about Mick Jagger when he divorced. I don't know which wife it was. It was one of them. I think it was Jerry Hall, the tall blonde model. Wait a second, they're all tall blonde models. That they did a list and they said, okay, I want this, and I give it out of a scale of 1 to 10. I give it a 10. That's really important to me. Where the other person might not care. For me, it would be like, say, a sports car. that's a 10 for me. My wife would go, it's a 1, right? But something that she wants might be a 10, and they kind of kind of how they
Balance
divided things out. Have you ever heard of that?
Not specifically, but it's all part of the negotiations, and that's absolutely what our clients do. It was one of the things we talked to them about is, develop a list of all of the personal belongings, antiques, collectibles, furniture, things like that. And you'd be surprised at the emotional attachment that people have to their bedroom suite. It was the first one they bought in their marriage and they want to keep it, or various other things. So as you just mentioned,
some of them might want to burn it.
You would think, you take it out in the backyard with an axe or something along those lines. But you don't know until you ask those questions what kind of emotional value someone gives to an item. And it's a good way to sort of balance it out and negotiate that, hey, I want that. I don't want that. I couldn't care less about that. So until you do that, you don't know.
With boys and toys are expensive, right? Boats, cars.
Yep.
ATVs, all this kind of stuff.
Tools is a big one. We've had to have people come in and value toolboxes.
Well, because Snap-on tool. Have you ever priced Snap-on tools?
That's exactly what it was. It was Snap-on tools, boxes and boxes of them.
Well, if you are a mechanic and you have a Snap-on tool sets, they're tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah, they're
exactly.
They're a lot.
Yeah.
So is it you get the boys want the toys?
They do. Although often they're considered a little bit different in that they're listed as a separate asset, such as an ATV would be under motor vehicles. Household goods, sometimes there's a bit of a meanness to certain parties that they know the other party will want it, so they want it too.
Spite.
Exactly.
Animals are a big one for that.
But making lists, I may not have done it exactly on the scale that you said, like 1 to 10, but I'll say prepare a list of the stuff you want, and the other party gives a list of what they want.
And then you're just bickering over what some...
Exactly. There may not be that many that are left to fight over. Now, if one takes the things that tend to be more valuable, there may be compensation that's due from one party to the other. Although usually the stuff in the house, people think it's worth a lot more than it is. And so at the end of the day, it usually evens out.
Even though that big screen TV cost you $4,000 new, is not worth that anymore.
No, exactly. Especially when you ask them, well, is it HD? No. It's like, oh, well.
It's worth nothing.
Exactly.
It'll cost you to get it taken to the recycling depot. All right, we're talking about family law. We talked about pensions, and we'll pick up on the conversation next on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.